back. Welcome to episode 5 of the Hoop Life Productions podcast. I'm Chance, here with my brother,
Hey,
AJ
Jay.
Hepler. How you doing, man?
I'm good, man. How are you?
I'm good. It's been a pretty slow week. I'm on winter break, but, I'm kind of hanging in there, ready for school, honestly. But Christmas should be a lot of fun.
Yeah, it'll be an interesting Christmas, with the pandemic and all that. But I plan on going home, seeing my family for a few days. So
Yeah, I'm gonna see my close family, but as far as normally on Christmas I'll be seeing like two families, like 20 people at each party. But this year it's like most of the family's gonna do a Zoom type of thing. I don't know how that's gonna go. That's the first, but
and Mom, if you are listening, I plan on receiving the usual amount of presents that I get from the entire family, just from you. So just so you know.
It seems like it gets worse and worse as I get older. Like, for my birthday this year, I just got something from my dad, and then nobody else even bothered. But, it's whatever. I had a good year.
I'm not asking for a lot. I know I'm getting older. I just want a PS5,
Only like half a grand.
Yeah,
it's
nothing
a little
big.
investment.
Yeah.
But yeah, for episode 5, we're just going to do a quick Eastern Conference preview. And then we're going to talk a little about the title contenders and a few sleeper teams that we had. I would say we're just going to do like list by list. So AJ's going to have his and then I'll have mine. But, it should be a lot of fun. I think we got a lot of insight for this one. So yeah, I'll start it off with kind of my Eastern Conference preview. I would say the contenders would have to be, the Bucks. Giannis just got back, and that kind of leads us into he just signed an extension yesterday as we're recording this on.
Yeah, kind of. I was watching First Take earlier today, and they were comparing it to LeBron's situation in Cleveland. I don't think that's fair. Like when he was first there,
Giannis has a squad.
Yeah, he has a squad. They're only saying that because it's a small market team, and it's not LA or any of that. But I think it was a great decision. He got his money. He's got financial security, and on top of that, they're contenders.
And the difference between those situations is LeBron had Anderson Varejao, and Giannis has Chris Middleton,
Drew Holiday,
Brook Lopez, in a pretty solid bench. They made a lot of moves in the offseason, so we both had them as the 1 seed.
Yeah,
they've been there the last 2 years, and they've got better, so it's a pretty easy choice for us.
And it's just the safe pick. They're the first seed the last 2 years, right? And they seem to just get better every year. The only question about them is what happens in the playoffs. I don't think anyone's worried about the regular season, and none of their guys have injury concerns, unlike both of our second seeds. So, it's definitely the right decision.
Yeah, speaking of the potential injury problems, we both had the Brooklyn Nets as 2, and this is like hypothetically like every team is fully healthy through the entire season. But obviously that's not likely to happen, especially with a team like Brooklyn that's, pretty up there in terms of average age of their players, especially with Kyrie and KD. But
that was my whole thing. Watching the preseason again, it's just the preseason, but KD looks like he's back. He looks like that guy, and it's not common where a guy comes off an Achilles tear and he's not your main concern. Because my main concern is Kyrie, and it's not even. He's had a lot of injuries, so that's that too. But
it's more than that.
He seems to miss out on games even when he's not hurt, and all this stuff going on with him not talking to the media, and I don't know.
He's only talked to them once since the season began.
Yeah, he's the main concern, but I can't really call it a concern because we both have him at the second seed.
Yeah.
And they're a very deep team. Dinwiddie's a 6-man of the year candidate, but I'm hearing he might start.
Yeah, they're gonna have. They might start somebody else, but I think it could be Dinwiddie and LeVert off the bench, and that backcourt is, for being honest, is better than most starting backcourts.
Yeah, that's a dangerous backcourt.
Which is really interesting, but so if either one of those goes down, I still think they're a playoff team, but if they go into the playoffs with a fully healthy roster, it's going to be really hard to outscore them. I think their defense is pretty mediocre, but I think they more than make up with it. make up for it on the offensive end.
Yeah, I mean, coming off an Achilles injury, KD probably won't be the same defender he was.
Yeah.
But if he is, then that's a big plus because he was a really good defender in Golden State, and Jared Allen's starting to become a anchor type of guy. So yeah.
And then I had the defending Eastern Conference champion Miami Heat at 3, but I think like 3 through 6 can be so interchangeable. Like all those teams have a shot, I think, but I don't know. It just really depends on preference. Like, who'd you have at 3?
I had Philly. 76ers, they just... I feel like I fall for this every year, you know. I'm always big on them because I'm a big...
Everybody was big on them last year. Just the roster wasn't built well around their stars.
And I'm big on Ben Simmons, especially. I have, as I said in our award prediction episode, I have Ben Simmons as the defensive player of the year, and I think Joel Embiid's another candidate. The thing is, they both have to stay healthy. That's all they need to do. And I don't think we're going to be hearing as much of Ben Simmons has to shoot because they put shooters around him this year.
Exactly.
Danny Green, Seth Curry.
Honestly, last year they could not have built that team any worse around Ben Simmons.
No.
Because Richardson he was a maybe
below 40% from 3.
So he's a pretty average 3-point shooter. And then, I mean, Tobias was at the 3, and then Tobias is a good shooter at the 4, I would say. And then Horford, who can stretch the floor, he's just so slow, and he as like Embiid wants to be in the post most of the time.
Yeah.
So it was just really weirdly constructed, but so I had the Heat at 3, and I think they pretty much are just running it back. I mean, they're pretty much just replacing Jay Crowder with Mo Harkless. I think Derrick Jones Jr. was gone, but he wasn't really like a rotational guy when it came down to the big games last year. So
he got a bag too, which surprised me.
Like the thing with the Heat, like Goran Dragic is a year older. Jimmy Butler's a year older, but like they've had like a whole year that pretty much that same unit. So I think they might be even better this year as a unit, right?
Yeah, I had them as 4th seed just because I'm so high on the potential of the 3rd seed, and I was a big believer that while Miami was a contender the whole time, I do think because they had such a strong-willed team, especially with Jimmy Butler, I think the bubble was better for them than a lot of teams.
Yeah,
for
sure.
But I have them at 4th, so they're still, they're right there. I think it's just a big year for their young guys. Yeah. If Hero takes a step forward, that's huge for them to have another main scoring option.
I think Duncan Robinson's pretty much at his peak.
Yeah,
we know what he
does. But Bam,
Kendrick Nunn as well.
Bam and Kendrick Nunn are just they're big for them, and Jimmy Butler just got to keep doing what he does.
Bam kind of had his breakout season, but like I still think there's another level if he finds that 3-point jumper.
And just that defensive player of the year candidate type of season for him.
Yeah, I don't think the Heat have really peaked. Like I've heard people talk about them being like a fluke last season.
No, I wouldn't call him a fluke.
Yeah, I wouldn't call him a fluke. I would say I would pick somebody else in a non-bubble format, but like the Heat are still like a contender in the East for sure, and they have a shot this year. Especially if they meet up with the Bucks again, that proved to be a really bad matchup for Milwaukee. So
for sure,
that should be really interesting. And then, so you had the Heat at 4. I had the Celtics at 4
as well.
And then I had the Sixers at 5. I'll start with the Sixers because you already talked about them, but like I said, like 3 through 6 was really interchangeable for me. I think it'll be really interesting to see how that turns out. But Philly, I like the fit so much better than last year. I think Seth Curry is an underrated floor spacer. In terms of percentage, he's the best shooter in NBA history, right? Which is kind of crazy because his brother is for sure
the best shooter.
Like ever. Like Steph's the best shooter ever, and especially with that volume and the way he hits them. But Seth, like if you're leaving him open, like he's gonna knock it down. And I was actually watching this. It was the Celtics Sixers game last night, and the Sixers actually beat him up pretty good when it was like both starting lineups out there, which gave me like a sense of hope that the Sixers, if this was like a 4-5 matchup in the first round of the playoffs, I think it'd be a really good series. But
the thing about Seth Curry, I've always thought like one day in the future there's going to be some documentary about Seth Curry, and there's good about Steph Curry, not Seth Curry.
Yeah.
About Steph Curry.
Maybe they fit in Seth.
Yeah, but that's the thing is, there's gonna be some guy from our generation back then that's gonna be like, you know, the legend has it that his brother was actually a better shooter.
You're gonna be like, hold on a second.
but yeah, he's a great shooter. He's big for
And
Philly.
then Danny Green, you can say what you want about him, but like the guy just wins wherever he goes. I think he struggled in the bubble. I mean, a lot of guys did, but Danny Green's a good shooter for his career, and I think he kind of returns to that form this year. And then defensively, nobody really talks about how good he is on that end. But I would say, like, he's a really good 3-and-D player, even though he didn't show the 3-point shooting in the playoffs. But
there was a time when he was in San Antonio where he was that guy, like, around the league, or if you said you just wanted a guy that would just knock down the three and defend for you, he was that 3-and-D guy.
Yeah, that eventually, he still is. Like, he's a little up there, maybe a little past his prime, but he's not the player he was in San Antonio. But like, there's still plenty of value with Danny Green
for sure.
But yeah, I think we both had the Raptors at 6.
Yep, I had the Raptors at 6. I think the difference between us though is that's where I made the decipher of that's no longer contenders. I just think they lost too much with Ibaka and Gasol gone. And I don't know if they have enough firepower with just Siakam and Lowry. And Van Vliet would have to take a step. Them keeping him is huge.
Right. Like, if they didn't retain him, they were done. I would say there was a chance that they would miss the playoffs without Van Vliet. But they did retain him. I think I still have the Raptors as contenders, and there's one reason, and it's OG Anunoby. I think he's had a really good preseason, and it's just preseason, but he's a guy that's been talked about to take a jump offensively. Like, he's shown to be efficient from, everywhere on the floor. He just hasn't really got the volume. But, with Ibaka and Gasol, I think there's more shots for him, and I think they kind of go to him more down the stretch. I mean, he hit that crazy game winner against the Celtics in the bubble last year. I don't know if you remember that, but I saw that. That was
barely got it off.
That was crazy. And, that's just one shot, but I think that's kind of the start for OG maybe being, I don't know if an all-star, but like a guy that's maybe talked about, like getting a nod. But I don't know what you think about OG.
Coming out of college, it's crazy. I wasn't super high on him, and then he didn't play the year they won the championship, did he? He didn't play in the finals at least.
I honestly don't remember.
I don't think he did. But then last year he showed a lot to be that 3-and-D guy. And
to be fair, Kawhi was playing probably 45 minutes a game.
Yeah, and I think if he takes a step forward, they need him to be more than that 3-and-D guy. And maybe that's not what he is, but just looking at their firepower, they need something like that.
Right.
If he does that, then I would absolutely put him in contenders. I just don't know if I see it.
So yeah, I had them as contenders, but only if OG takes another step. I think they're probably a first-round exit if OG is the same guy, but I really believe that OG is gonna have a breakout season. But okay. And then this is where it gets kind of crazy. Our list is, it's totally different. I guess we can go over the last 2 spots. I had the Pacers at 7. I just think they're a really good regular season team. I don't think there's a chance that they make it anywhere past the first round. I mean, that's pretty much where they've been, but you think about, like, maybe Oladipo shows maybe 80-90% of what he was a couple of years ago before the injury.
Yeah.
You got an all-star in Sabonis, right? Malcolm Brogdon, Bubba Warren maybe comes back. They're a really interesting team. Like, I could see them being anywhere in the top 5, and then I could also see them not even making the playoffs. It's really interesting with them.
I have them right outside the playoffs at 9, but like you said, if Oladipo ends up being that same player or even close to from this 2 years ago, they're a playoff team for sure because he was a top 3-4 shooting guard.
Yeah.
Best defensive.
They have a really good starting 5. There's no superstar, but like 1 through 5, it's like there's not really a hole there.
My reason for having them out was Nate McMillan being gone. Now, I understand that they had those first-round exits every year, but the thing about Nate McMillan, you look at it, he had Paul George. They lost Paul George. We're like, oh, It's over. They got Sabonis and Oladipo, playoff team again. And then Oladipo gets hurt, and like, oh, it's over. They got better that season, and Sabonis had a great year, and then they make the playoffs, and Oladipo comes back, and he didn't look like the same player. So I guess if he came back as the same player, then they're absolutely
people
kind
of forget when they had their roster together. They almost beat that Cavs team that made the playoffs.
Yeah, they went what?
They went 7 games.
Now that Cavs team wasn't that good, but
LeBron was like that year. He was like the best player to ever grace the earth.
Best player I ever saw was 2018 LeBron.
Yeah, and then I actually changed my list a little bit ago. I had the Wizards at 8. I just don't see them missing the playoffs. I think Russell Westbrook and Bradley Beal at least gets you a playoff spot. But
that's the same reason I have the Wizards at 8 as well. They have all the offense in the world. I mean, Denny's looking really good in the preseason. Looks confident. Bertans, Rui, all those guys. They can give him a lot of firepower along with obviously the backcourt of Westbrook and Beal. But, and I hate this argument usually when people say, but I think this is a really good one in this a good situation for this, and there's only one ball. Like, Beal had the best year of his career last year, but he was taking every shot, and it'll be interesting to see what he does with Westbrook. I think Westbrook gets a bad rep. I think he's actually had a lot of players that had the best season of their career along him.
Russell Westbrook's like an interesting guy because like so many people wrote him off, but like before the bubble, he was an all NBA guy. Yeah. Like he still is a really good.
And Paul George had his best year of his career with Russell Westbrook. Yeah. So if he can have a similar impact with Bradley Beal, who already had the best year of his career last year, then they're absolutely a playoff
Russell's
team.
Value in the regular season is far higher than it is in the playoffs.
Yeah, I agree.
But yeah, I had Pacers at 7, Wizards at 8, and then who did you have 7, 8? You had?
I had the Hawks at 7.
And I had the Hawks at 9. So, but like, it's just so weird because there's gonna be I think there'll be one good team in the East that won't make the playoffs. But
yeah, the thing about the Hawks is we don't know yet because they haven't done anything yet. But on paper, they're just
like in terms of roster personnel, like that's a playoff team. If they put it together. I think they're probably better than the Pacers and the Wizards, but I can't put them over the Pacers and the Wizards because I kind of know what they're going to be. But
and there's a lot of questions about the Hawks. The only question the only guy that we know is going to get his is Trae Young. Everyone else, like, who's going to get the touches here? Like, John Collins, who's going to get the touches? Him or Gallo, Cam Reddish or Bogdanovich, or Hunter, or all these guys have to share the ball. The only guy that doesn't have to worry about that is Trae Young. So it depends on the decisions that Lloyd Pierce and them make. I mean, if they put their best starting 5 together, then they're absolutely a playoff team. So
like, they spent a lot of money in the offseason, but that doesn't mean they're going to peak this year. Mm-hmm. I think there's still too much young, unproven talent that'll take them places, not this year perhaps, but like the next half decade. I would say they'll be pretty set up to make some noise in the East. But yeah, I had them just outside the playoffs, but before I made the change, I actually had them at 8, right behind the Pacers, and the Wizards at 9. But I just think with the Wizards 2 stars and then what they have around them, I just think it's enough to at least get them a first round matchup. But and then kind of the teams I'm just totally throwing away here. I had the Magic at 10. I had the Bulls at 11, Pistons at 12, Cavs at 13, Hornets at 14, and Knicks at 15.
Yeah, all right. So we had all the same teams, just a little different order. I had the Bulls at 10, Magic at 11, Pistons at 12, Knicks at 13, Cavs at 14, and the Hornets at 15. I just think the Hornets have the worst roster in the league, but they're at least out east.
Yeah.
But
yeah. I just had the Knicks because I don't know. I feel like Gordon Hayward gets the Hornets a couple more wins than the Knicks
do. But the thing about the Knicks is Obi Toppin, to me, he looks the most NBA ready so far. He looked really nice out there.
I think it'll be key for them to get rid of Julius Randle so Toppin can take that next step and be the guy for them. But I still think they're a few years away if they keep the roster how it is.
Yeah.
I actually watched the Pistons-Knicks first 2 preseason games, and some of their young guys look pretty good. Like, I liked what Dennis Smith brought off the bench. He was actually kind of an underrated passer. I didn't realize he was that good at finding guys open.
Really
but the problem was, like, the guys he would find open just couldn't shoot, so he's not getting any assists from it. Like Kevin Knox.
Oh.
I was hoping he would be good, but he just every shot I've seen from him hits the back rim. I don't know what his deal is.
Was it Kevin Knox, like, statistically the worst player in the league that received valuable minutes last year? Yeah. I'm pretty sure he was.
He's been up there the first 2 years of his career, but
maybe that's the Knicks effect. I don't know.
The RJ Barrett thing, he's weird because you'll watch the game and it's just like, RJ, man, it's kind of hard to watch him. But then you look at his stats and he'll have like 27 and 4, and it's like, where did that even come from?
That's how he was at Duke. I remember the beginning of the Duke season last year, the year before. The year before, when like Zion and RJ and Cam Reddish all came into the season, and I don't know if you remember, but RJ was actually the highest scouted player. Like, he was supposed to be that guy. And I remember watching the first few games, and it was like, this guy's putting up the same stats that Zion was at the time. But you watch the games, and
Zion makes it look so much better.
You watch the games; they're clearly not on the same level. Like, he's clearly not Zion, and that's how he looks as a pro so far. Like, he's gonna be one of those guys that gives you stats, but we'll have to see him improve how he actually plays the game.
Like, I would say just his play style as a whole isn't like appealing. Like, he'll attack the basket, he'll play hard on defense, but like, really, he's not an above average defender. From 3, he's kind of streaky because the first game, it was the first preseason game, and it was ugly. It was the Pistons and Knicks. Neither of them had played in 9 months, so it was understandable. RJ had 3 air balls in the first half from 3, and I honestly, I was kind of surprised, but I felt bad at the same time because like he's not a great shooter, but he's not 3 air balls kind of bad. But
yeah,
I don't know. That was honestly the worst NBA game I've ever watched. Pistons Knicks.
I didn't watch it, but I heard it was ugly.
It's like nobody could ever keep the ball in their hands, and the Knicks actually ended up winning the game. But
the one thing that I did see, I don't remember if he shot very well, like percentage wise, but I saw some promising things from Sadiq Bey.
Yeah, for sure.
So he could be big for the Pistons if he keeps that up. And another thing, the Pistons, they can slide all the way up to that 8th, 9th spot, maybe 7th if we see. Do you think we see the 2018-19 Blake Griffin?
I don't think we see the type of stats of like a 2018-19 Blake, but like in terms of like the impact of winning, for sure. I think we have more around him than we did 2 years ago, but like the East has just gotten so much better.
Yeah, way better.
So
I'm not
it'll be
sure.
interesting. I've watched another guy, Killian Hayes. He was our first round draft pick as well, and he struggled from the field. He had a lot of turnovers in the first game, but like there was flashes there, and that's really all you can hope for at this point in a 19-year-old rookie. Like there's like a learning period with guys, especially guards coming into the
especially
league.
Point guards. Like, that point guard position is the equivalent to the quarterback or the pitcher. Yeah. It's the hardest sport. It's the hardest position to play.
There's a learning period there for sure.
By far the hardest position to play, and there's a learning period. I mean, you see guys like Trae Young who just did not look good the first half of his rookie year, and now he's great. And I think we've talked about how we were hoping Kobe White could make a step like that because he didn't look great at first. Colin Sexton's another guy.
Yeah, they just kind of figure it out as the season goes. John Morant was really a guy that doesn't come around very often.
Yeah, that just comes out the gate.
Just going crazy. But I think, like, he plays so fast that
he plays like Derrick Rose, who did the same thing. Derrick Rose came out the gate and was a monster. Trying to think of other guys like that. Even Steph took a long time, you know. he always shot it well, but he took a while to become.
Well, Steph was like behind Monte Ellis, so that was an interesting Warriors team. Fun to watch, but I think we both had Pistons at 12, but like they're a really deep team, so I think they could take them maybe a little bit farther than that.
I think
there's
Jeremy
no
Grant
way they
could
do.
Really help them.
I don't think there's any way they do anything in the playoffs, but
no.
I mean, it'll be an interesting team, like the mix of young guys and veteran leaders, but it'll take a lot to put them anywhere. And then the Magic, they're a team that I have at 10. They made the playoffs the last 2 years, lost in 5 both years. But the difference this year is the East got better, and then they're also without Jonathan Isaacs, who tore his ACL. So
the thing about the Magic is there's only one player that I look forward to seeing, and it's Markelle Fultz. I had him as a dark horse for most improved, so that could help them a lot. But they just got disappointments everywhere. Aaron Gordon has really disappointed me in his career in terms of every year he's that guy that we're like, can he take that step to be that Blake Griffin type of guy, and he never is. And then Jonathan Isaac's a guy I'm really high on, but that knee injury is scary, and
especially with a player that with his kind of play style, because he's so good on the defensive end with his length and athleticism, and then he's kind of found his groove, attacking the basket, and he can shoot the three a little bit. But they'll be without him this year. The Vucevic is really their only certain guy. Vucevic is good for 20 and 10, and that's just what he is. And he's a solid NBA player, but I don't think
Fournier can give you 17.
I don't think they have enough. Yeah. Fournier's another guy. He's really interesting, but they're gonna need those younger guys to take a big step, and I don't really see that happening, especially with how much better the East has gotten. But
who'd you have at 14? Because I had Cleveland.
I had Charlotte at 14, and then you had them as the worst.
I had them at 15. Cleveland, Okoro looks promising. That's why I have him above Hornets. He looked really good in the preseason. And Sexton, I think the big thing about Colin Sexton is if he can't get better as a facilitator, I think he's that Lou Williams, Dennis Schroeder type of guy who just comes off the bench and just lights the other team up. But God, it would be big for them if he could really become a good facilitator.
I think Darius Garland is the guy that should be their facilitator at the point. Yeah. And I've heard other players talk about in their little bubble training camp that the non-playoff teams had. He was their best player, so I'm hoping somehow he can take the next step, and maybe if he becomes a better facilitator, then that makes Drummond better, that makes Kevin Love better, and that there's a higher ceiling there if he can take another step. But it's just a really
weird roster.
The roster's so weird. Garland is a point guard, and he's undersized. Sexton plays the two. He's really undersized, and then
that doesn't. I mean, the only example I can think of that working is CJ and Dame.
Yeah.
There's not a lot of undersized backcourts that succeed.
But they're just so good at what they do, and it's totally different with the Cavs because these guys are kind of figuring out what they are. But they're just kind of a uncertain team. I think Drummond and Love put up good numbers, but the other three guys in their starting lineup, you're not really sure what they are. But I had the Cavs at 13. Where did you had them at what?
14.
You had them at 14.
Yeah.
I had the Knicks as the worst team in the East. I just think they have this weird mix of young guys that haven't proven to be that good, and then their veterans also aren't that great. So I just think every team in the East.
The Knicks could sign. They could trade for LeBron and Giannis tomorrow, and I would not be upset if you put them last in the East.
They just figure out a way to do that.
They're just the Knicks, man. And I have them at 13 just for roster reasons, but if we're going by front office, I mean, they're dead last in the league, so...
Yeah. And it was weird watching them because they put Nerlens Noel starting over
Mitchell Robinson.
And it just doesn't make any sense.
And we were talking about this before we started recording, and you you said because Mitchell Robinson gets in a lot of foul trouble, which is completely true. But if you're the Knicks, do you plan on being in a close game with a Miami down the stretch and Mitchell Robinson fouls out?
Yeah.
No, you don't. You're not going to be in a close game down the stretch with Miami.
Yeah,
so you just got to let your young guys play. If they
he's
foul
not
out,
going to learn to stay out of foul trouble if he's not on the floor.
Yeah.
More than Nerlens Noel, and we know who Noel is. Like, he's like a solid role player that can protect the rim and throw down some dunks.
He does exactly what Mitchell Robinson does at a lesser degree. So why would you not want the young guy who's already better?
And he has nowhere near the ceiling of Mitchell Robinson.
No, not at all.
I just think they're ruining another young player's career, and it's
surprise.
It's kind of hard to see, but because there's so many of those guys on that team, and then the hiring of Tom Thibodeau didn't make much sense because he's never really been a part of this rebuild type thing. He's always like trying to coach championship contending teams.
Yeah, that's the thing is, like, I guess it's a good thing that they don't have a deep bench because benches don't play for Thibodeau teams. Their starters play all game. No. So
I could see R.J. Barrett playing 40 minutes a game.
Yeah. I understand where he's coming from if he has that type of roster. Like, he succeeded with Chicago because he had the guys that could play.
Another thing, that preseason game I was watching, Julius Randle, their starting lineup in a preseason game played like 35 minutes, and Obi Toppin barely saw the floor. I was like, what are they doing? They're not developing anyone.
You know, like that Chicago team he had, they had those bruisers like Joakim Noah and Carlos Boozer and Derrick Rose. He has that mentality. You know, they had those guys that could play these guys all game and we're going to contend, but they don't have that team. Yeah. And you saw he didn't work at Minnesota, so I don't understand the hiring. I guess they just wanted to get the biggest name they could get because that's the Knicks thing to do.
Yeah. It's like, they're set up to be a team with a ton of cap space in 2021, but Giannis just signed. Kawhi's probably going to go back to the Clippers. Paul George already resigned, so 2021 free agency isn't even looking as good as we once thought it was, so I don't know what they're really going to do with that kind of money, but I had the Knicks as the worst team. Another team's the Bulls. They're really interesting because
their defense is so suspect.
Yeah.
Last year they gave up the most points that any team has in the last 4 years. Figured that out.
Okay.
And I don't see anything changing. I watched their preseason game and they put up points. Like Zach LaVine is a bucket, and these other guys like Markkanen and hopefully Kobe White, they can put up points too, but they can't defend for anything, and that's why I have them at 10th instead of 8th or 7th.
Mm-hmm.
Simply for
I
that
had
reason.
I had them at 11 because like there's 4 guys in their starting lineup that are like on the brink of having breakout seasons. Like Kobe White is a bucket, Larry Markkanen can score from 3, and Wendell's another guy, but Zach LaVine's really the only proven guy on that team, and LaVine being your only proven guy is not going to get you into the playoffs. You're going to need other guys to step up.
Their best defender in that preseason game, and shout out to this guy because everyone called him a reach, and he still might be, but he looked nice so far, is Patrick Williams.
Yeah, he's another guy.
But think about that. Their rookie was their best defender in their preseason game. Like, that says a lot.
He's not even starting. It's going to be Otto Porter at the 3.
Yeah.
Which is understandable because Porter's
Porter's probably their best defender.
Like a decently valuable NBA player, but yeah, we had the Bulls out of the playoffs. The last team we haven't talked about is the Charlotte Hornets.
Yeah.
And they're just a team that's going to be a lot of fun to watch, but it's not going to come to wins. And I've heard a few people talk about them being in the playoffs, and I just really can't see it. I think we're on the same boat there, but
I watched LaMelo's first game and his second game, and not once did I look at the box score in the corner. Like, I didn't look at the scoreboard, anything. I was just watching the highlight plays, and I was having fun.
Once they get a rebound, they just go. It's really fun.
It's fun, but yeah.
The Miles Bridges and LaMelo Ball fast break is probably the most fun thing I've seen in preseason.
It's very similar to that Lonzo Ball
and then you
Zion.
look at their plus minus after the game, and it's horrible. Like,
that's
neither
the difference.
of them impact winning. And then, surprise, surprise, Hayward hurt his finger apparently today.
Yeah, fractured his finger.
And I feel bad for the guy, but I don't feel bad for the Hornets.
I don't feel bad. I don't feel bad for Gordon Hayward. He got the bag.
I mean, I feel bad for him in terms of like injuries. I want to see him. I want to see Gordon Hayward be Gordon Hayward again.
Yeah.
And then, like, for the Hornets, they knew this was the problem with giving him $30 million, but yet they did it. And he's gonna be there 4 years, and this is probably just gonna keep happening. But
that
apparently it's day to day, which is that's good. But
that Gordon Hayward contract is gonna start looking like a Chandler Parsons type of contract when he got his Batum.
Yeah, they're just reloading on terrible contracts. It seems.
Yeah.
And I hope Gordon Hayward at least produces for what he can be, but it's just not likely. So yeah, that's our Eastern Conference preview. And then we can move on to my title contenders. I had 6 teams. I had the Bucks, Nets, Celtics, Sixers, Heat, and Raptors. And we had the same top 5, but I had the Raptors as title contenders, and you didn't.
I didn't. Like I mentioned earlier, I just think they lost too much. And just the firepower compared to the other teams, like the addition of Drew Holiday for the Bucks is going to be huge.
Yeah.
Holiday's one of those guys that now that he's going to get attention in Milwaukee with them being so good. I think he's legitimately in contention.
He's not going to be so underrated anymore.
Yeah, he's in contention for one of the first guards to win that DPOY in a while. I think he's really got a chance.
Yeah.
And if Dante DiVincenzo has a big year, that helps him so much off the bench. And he's such a good... will he start it?
I think...
He might start.
They don't have much at point guard besides
Holiday.
DJ Augustine.
Holiday will probably start.
So I think Holiday's at the point.
DiVincenzo,
Chenzo's
Middleton,
at the 2.
Giannis, and Brook Lopez.
That's
a horrifying defensive team. That's crazy.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think with the rise of him, like that could help a lot. And then the Nets, they obviously have ridiculous firepower, probably the most in the East, just overall. Yeah. Like, KD's a bucket, Kyrie's a bucket, Dinwiddie's a bucket.
Kyrie and KD are NBA champions, and like once you have that DNA, I think you have a shot once you get yourself back there. But.
And then we look at Philly, Embiid and Simmons, just so much talent. Tobias.
They have career years for them to have a shot at the East, but I think they're set up to have career years with Curry and Danny Green spacing the floor. They're just gonna have so much more room to work with and do what they do best. And then the Celtics, they've been in the Eastern Conference Finals 3 out of the last 4 years. Yeah, they haven't gotten over the hump. And the thing with them, like, they're still a really young team.
Yeah.
And their 2 best players are still really young with Jaylen Brown, Tatum.
They still got Kemba.
Yeah, Kemba's out for the first month, but by the time the playoffs come around, hopefully he's going to be at full strength so they can get something going. And Marcus Smart's another glue guy that it seems like every championship team kind of has one of those. You know what I'm saying? But yeah, I think it's a 6-man race in the East. The Heat, they're gonna be the same team, but the difference, I think they'll have even better chemistry than last year because
and their young guys will just get better.
Like they've been through that dogfight together already, and that does a lot for a team that's gonna run it back. I don't think an East team wins the finals this year, especially with the LA teams both getting better. But
I think there's still a big gap between the East and the West. I don't think when people talk about how much better the East has got, I don't know if they've drawn closer to the West. I just think they've gotten better all around.
Yeah.
Like there's more East teams that are in contention in the East. It's not as top heavy.
I've really loved what the NBA has turned out to in the last few years because there's so much more balance than there was.
Would you say this is the most talented the league has ever been?
For sure.
There's just studs everywhere.
Talent.
It's crazy.
Yeah, for sure.
It's crazy. Like you take a guy like, let me think, James Harden.
Mm-hmm.
where would you rank him among top players? Like 4, 5, 6?
I think he's like 6 or 7.
Isn't that crazy though? That's a guy that gives you 35 a game.
Yeah, exactly. That's what Kobe was doing.
Yeah, and he's over there around 6 or 7, and it just.
If Harden had a championship though, that totally changes your perception of him. But he hasn't got that title, and that gives you a certain level of credibility that he hasn't gotten yet. But yeah.
Should we? Do you want to talk about James Harden for a second?
Yeah, we kind of talked about him in the last one, but he has returned to Houston, and he played, and I think it was their 3rd preseason game.
Mm-hmm.
He put up some decent numbers in the few minutes he had, along with John Wall. But if he stays in Houston, Houston's a really good team, but like they could also miss the playoffs if he doesn't play.
He looks like he was eating good in Atlanta too.
He gained some power.
He's a big boy. He's always been like that, so I don't think it'll stop his game if he plays for them. But he definitely looked like he was having a little too much fun.
He's not helping them out in the fact that he's put on weight, and this is arguably the best roster he's had in terms of talent, top to bottom.
Did you see today that reporter asked him what he was doing in Atlanta, and where else was he? I don't remember where else he was. In Vegas. He was in Atlanta and Vegas. Oof. And they asked him what he was doing while he was there, and he told the reporter he was training for the NBA season. And he asked him how he was doing that when the Rockets were at training camp when he wasn't there in Houston, and he said, I was training with my personal trainer the whole time. It kind of sounded like he was just trying to avoid the question.
Oh, he was, but...
And I usually am not a fan of. I usually side with the players versus the media, but the way he was answering the questions, it almost seemed like he was trying to make the reporter or the media feel like it was their fault, like they were picking on him, like he didn't completely ditch his team to go.
He's turned into
party
a very unlikable player in the last few months.
Little girl,
and not that he was likable before, like. Watching Rocket games wasn't exactly fun with him just dribbling between his legs 8 times and shooting a 3, but like just his attitude toward basketball the last few months has been it just hasn't been ideal. But let's move on to sleeper teams of the East. I think the Hawks are a sleeper team. Sixers, Bulls, and Raptors were my list of sleeper teams. But,
I have the Hawks as a sleeper team simply for the reason that if they end up in the playoffs and you go deep in a series, you do not want to get in a shootout with Trae Young.
No, definitely.
He's shown to be clutch down the stretch, and he can shoot from anywhere. I think the only 2 guys that can shoot like him are Dame and Steph, and you get in a shootout with that, not just him, but that whole team. You double him, he's going to pass it to Bogdanovich, Cam Reddish, Gallinari, John Collins, Hunter. They just got shooters everywhere, and
it's really a matter of them putting it together. Like if they put that roster together in a short amount of time.
I think the question is if they make the playoffs. If they make the playoffs, they're easily a sleeper just because no one wants to run into them. Because if they make the playoffs, that means they put it together. Mm-hmm. So I don't know. I wouldn't want to run into them.
1 through 5, that team is actually 1 through 10 or 11.
10.
That
they got
10 or 11 man rotation. Yeah, that's really good.
Yeah.
But
they're definitely a sleeper. Another sleeper. I think the Bulls, like I mentioned before, the East, they play in the one conference where, like I said, they don't play any defense, but in the East, you might be able to get away with that if they put up a lot of points.
Mm-hmm. They definitely can with that personnel.
I don't really see anyone else as a sleeper other than maybe the Pacers.
Yeah.
But I don't know if they have enough firepower, and like the Wizards, we always see a Russell Westbrook team. It's harder to win in the playoffs. Mm-hmm. So, yeah, I would say my main sleepers are Atlanta and Chicago in the East.
Yeah, I like that. I had the Raptors in there as well, just because of the X factor and OG Anunoby. Like I said before, so I'll be quick here. If an Anunoby takes a step forward into stardom, which I think he can be, like he's got the skill and frame to do it. If he can take that step forward, he will be. But the Raptors don't have a realistic shot if he doesn't take a step. But yeah, that was my sleeper team. And one last thing before we end the playoffs, and our Eastern Conference preview. Giannis signed the extension yesterday. 5 years, $228 million, the biggest deal in NBA history. And I was excited for this personally because I value loyalty in basketball. And not only basketball, but life too. I value loyalty.
Yeah.
But Giannis signing that extension, it wasn't surprising, but like we've seen time and time again, like young stars get sucked away by that bigger market, like in LA or in Miami.
Well, my thoughts on this is that the lack of loyalty thing, and I don't think it's always bad. I think the lack of loyalty is one of those reasons that we talk about how talented the league is right now, because these guys play together and they play well together. But I think the AAU system of basketball in America is like really destroying that fabric of like loyalty. Because you see these young kids, like Moni Bates is that next guy, but you see like Zion and all these guys coming up, and as 17, 18-year-olds, they're given everything in the world. Like, they're drafted and given millions of dollars. And not that these European players aren't, but it's a lot harder for a European guy to get scouted and drafted high. And I think that's why we see their culture of basketball brings a lot more loyalty. Like a guy like Jokic is big in Denver. And he's huge for them. And Giannis loves Milwaukee. He's coming from people you see on TV.
It's looking like Luka's going to be a Maverick for a long time.
Yeah.
Like, Dirk was a Maverick his whole career.
Yeah, I think that's a big thing. You grow up in America playing on all these AAU teams. You're like, why would I stay in Milwaukee if I can go play with this guy that I played with in eighth grade?
You can get the same amount of money, play with better guys,
Yeah.
and be in a city like LA. And we know LA is a super fun area, but I really respect that out of Giannis. He really grew up there. Like, I remember stories of him as an 18-year-old, like getting his first contracts and sending all of his money over back home, which is super cool.
He took a cab to practice.
Yeah, I think he even like ran to practice one time because he didn't have any money.
I don't know if you remember, like his first few seasons. Who was the coach at that point? I don't know if it was Jason Kidd. So whoever it was, Giannis's role used to be to stand in the corner, shoot threes.
Yeah,
and it's crazy to think that. Like,
and then
they
he started
utilize
developing,
him,
and they were like, "You could build a franchise around this guy."
The first real step is when Jason Kidd had let him play point for like a 10-game stretch or whatever, and he was hooping, and they were like, "All right, move this guy to the 4, make him a point forward / he was at the 3 a little bit," and that's when he took that step, and it was like, oh, wow.
It's super cool for him because, he's got his brother with him in Milwaukee, and then L.A. I think they had Costas, his brother, trying to lure Giannis into L.A., but obviously that's not going to happen because he'll be in Milwaukee the next 5 or 6 years. But
I saw this clip because it's weird. Where was Giannis picked? Was he 14?
He was 15, just outside the lottery.
I saw this clip with the Raptors GM Masai Ujiri saw it on Instagram the other day. It was raw footage of him during that draft trying so hard to get that pick for Giannis.
Yeah,
and it's crazy because he's drafted nothing but studs, like you see with Malachi Flynn now is looking nice, but and Van Fleet undrafted, all these guys. But could you imagine like if that Raptors had Giannis right now? But it shows that even though he went, you said 15th, teams were really high on him just for his potential.
Dallas, I heard Mark Cuban was really high on him too.
Yeah, that's crazy.
Which is crazy because they would have had another European
all
superstar.
European.
Yeah.
It's Raptors and Raptors and Mavericks. They find those studs.
It's funny how that stuff turns out. But yeah, Giannis is back in Milwaukee another 5 years. That's huge for them. I think it really became obvious in him resigning when they gave up 5 first-round picks for Drew Holiday.
We said when that Drew Holiday trade happened, it was lopsided, but they got Drew Holiday.
There's no way they give up 5 first-round picks and then
they must have gotten word from Giannis, like, give me Drew Holiday and I'm staying, like something like that. Or
Milwaukee is set up to be good in the next 5 years. Yeah, you got anything else?
Not really. Hope everyone's doing good for the holidays and has a good Christmas.
Yep.
Stay safe. Crazy year.
For sure. Make sure if you haven't checked out the other 3 episodes, they are up on our YouTube page along with this one. We'll be back next Monday, Thursday. Love you guys. Peace out.
Have a good one. See ya.